What if it isn't all in your head, but it is in your brain? Our brains take in so much information and we have to process through it. Our brains are responsible for figuring out how we're communicating with somebody, the information that's coming back from them. Our brains are responsible for how we heal, how we function, and all of those neural pathways can get subluxated by trauma, toxins, thoughts, and it can really mess up our lives. So this is a story about a man who not just got his ability to walk back, but was able to heal from the inside out. We're also going to talk about testimonials. How do we share these stories? How do we get people to tell us their stories? And then what do we do with them once we have that gold mine of stories from patients? I'm Jenna Quinton, founder of Adjust Your Media and chiropractic advocate, and this is another episode of What Chiropractic Doesn't Cure, Stories of Innate. Today's guest on What Chiropractic Doesn't Cure, Stories of Innate is Dr. Barbara Eaton. She's a powerhouse in the chiropractic industry, a sought-after keynote speaker. I heard her speak at Focus Oklahoma City a couple of years ago, and she's a transformational coach. But I love that she added all of this. She's also a Jesus follower, a wife, a mom, a grammie, and a ruggedly tough Alaskan. So welcome, Dr. Barbara.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. And you know, your smile has stuck with me after I spoke. Well, I think actually before I spoke, you came up to me and said, I can't wait to hear you. And then afterwards you came up again. So you stuck in my heart and my mind as much as I did yours. So thank you so much for having me on your podcast today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So we had talked about what story you might share, and you said you had a story of someone who was wheelchair bound after a car accident. So tell us that story.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of practicing in my hometown, which was a town of just 5,000 people. We're a very blue collar farming town. And I did things a little differently than most. I hired my first coach 5 months before I ever opened my practice. I felt like I had a great education to be a chiropractor, but not a business owner. And I truly believed the books that I was reading, and that 85% of your success in small business has to do with your business acumen, not your ability to do the skill, right? Whether you're a chiropractor or a plumber or dentist or whatever. And so that paid off really well. And for those 5 months, my coach and I worked on my systems and tons of role playing and all of that. And so I went from 0 to 180 visits a week in 89 days. So in that, and all cash, I didn't want to be in a threesome with insurance companies. And it was really fun to come back and help the people in the community that had helped raise me. And one of those individuals, his name was John. And I knew John's mom and aunt really well. They were Sunday school teachers at my church when I was growing up. And this young man was involved in a very serious car accident and was wheelchair bound. And so when they brought him in, I'll be honest with you, I was a little bit skeptical of, I knew chiropractic care will help him regardless of your condition. I knew it had the potential to help him get up out of that wheelchair. I can say as though I knew for sure when we got started, that would be the situation. And I'll never forget. So I had like a long hallway in my practice, and we had like an exam room and then 2 adjusting rooms and a family adjusting room. And I walked out of the family adjusting room, and there was John with Kathleen, his aunt, and his mom on this side. And he was walking down the hallway to the adjusting room. And my office manager and other practice members, we all just stood there and did like the slow clap. Like it was just, everyone was crying, and it was just so exciting to see this young man be able to gain some independence and do what, the medics told him you'll never walk again. And his mom and aunt believed something quite different. And chiropractic did what chiropractic does, and that's restore normal nerve flow. So that was a pretty exciting time in practice, was to see John get up and walk.
Yeah. I love that, because a lot of times we talk about what causes subluxations and those traumas, those toxins, those thoughts, and such a significant trauma where, like you said, you're like, this is a big one. This is a big traumatic accident, can his body heal from
Yeah.
that? And chiropractic opening that floodgate of healing and making those connections. I go back to like a magic school bus picture of the body in my mind, where, it's okay, here's the plan. That neural pathway has been opened and we can now send supplies down there. And that's just brilliant.
Yep. I mean, that's what happened. And, he's continued to do well. I mean, obviously, I have sold my practice and live in Alaska now. There's a thing I learned from one of my mentors. His name is Michael Neal, and it's the three-legged stool of sales. So in those three legs, there's genuine goodwill. Do I have genuine goodwill for this person? Number two is, am I confident I can help them? And number three is horse in the race. And horse in the race is usually the hardest thing, meaning, what do I have? What kind of agenda do I have in helping you? And many times the horse in the race can also be like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to pay my mortgage if you don't say yes to care. Horse in the race could be like the need to be liked, the need to be right, the need to be heard, like all of those things. And when we look at helping someone like John and confidence, I think it's so important as chiropractors that we remember what our job is, and our job is to clear neural pathways. My business partner and I, in Brain Not Bone Alone, it's where mind and spine align to heal humanity. And it's because what we do is open up those neural pathways. We impact brain health and function, so the body does what it was designed to do. And that may mean that you can get up and walk out of a wheelchair. That may mean that you get pregnant. That may mean that, like Harvey Lillard, your hearing is restored. That may mean that your body heals in other ways and you still stay in pain. Because as your chiropractor, what I'm trained to do is to clear neural pathways, and your body's responsibility is to do the rest. And I love that as a chiropractor, we're in partnership with our practice members, right? Like, you don't bring your broken down, busted up body and then just expect that wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, it's suddenly going to heal. And, you'll be walking, like your life is radically going to change. It's a partnership, right? Like, subluxated daddy, subluxated mommy makes subluxated baby. And if you start in chiropractic care at 40 years old and now you're getting adjusted, like, that's awesome. There's a lot to unravel in that process. And so I find in that three-legged stool, if we remember to stay in our lane, and our lane is clearing neural pathways and certainly still talking about symptoms, like, I think it's really sad that there was a guru at some point in our profession that said, don't talk about symptoms with practice members. Because guess what? I also have adjusted a lot of chiropractors in my day. And guess what we like to talk about? Our own symptoms. But yet we don't want our practice members to talk about them. And it does matter. It does matter that how they feel about themselves when they're in pain. It does matter how they feel about not being able to play with their kids. And that's why it's so important to remember to stay in our lane and to be confident in the fact that checking somebody and adjusting them and post-checking them is the best thing that we can do for humanity.
Yes. And I love that you bring so much neuroscience into it. Back at your talk at Focus, now I cannot think of the name of the book, but I'll look it up and I'll put it in the show notes. The
Brain-centric design.
Brain-centered design. Thank you. Yes. So I'll put that in the show notes as well, because that was just really eye-opening to me from a storytelling point of view of if people are in that amygdala hijack and they're just trying to survive, they are just trying to manage their symptoms. I think you mentioned it, like they're Google posting. If you don't have primacy and relevancy in what you're saying, in the stories you're telling, and what you're posting on social media, their brain just can't, it's not going to come to the top of their Google search because it's just not there. So you had said too, I always want to encourage chiropractors to tell more stories. You mentioned you have 13 effective ways to leverage testimonials. And I was really excited about that. I really want to know more about that, because so often people say, oh yeah, I've got great testimonials, but I don't know what to do with it. I don't know how to tell these stories. So what do you tell them?
Yeah. And first, I'll just offer to, anyone listening to this or watching, if you'd like the list of 13 effective ways, just shoot me an email, drb@drbarbaraeaton.com. I'll just send it right over to you. Here's something to know about testimonials. They're our greatest source of believability. And if I'm looking for, think about this, like if you're looking for a new coach, would you be more impressed with like a stack of documents that shows a bunch of statistics, or being connected with individuals and being able to talk to them and being able to read their story about their experience with me? And here's why. So one of the developers of brain-centric design, his name is Dr. Kiran Omani, and he's one of the world's leading cognitive neuroscientists. And he developed a principle called affect before effect leads to better business outcomes. That's the Kiran principle. So what that means is when we reach affect, right? Like touch, feeling, that's the doorway in, and that's neurological, right? So when you have stories for your practice members to read about how you've helped other people, it's going to be the fastest way in for deep understanding and learning, right? And in order to be able to have deep understanding and learning, and that's in a pedagogic model versus a behaviorist model, we have to impact all 4 lobes of the brain: the parietal lobe, the temporal lobe, the occipital lobe, and prefrontal cortex, right? So when we share testimonials across different platforms, whether it's a video on Instagram, maybe it's us interviewing a practice member. And by the way, your practice members love being interviewed. And especially so context is really important, right? And the context here of asking them to share their testimonial and their story really frames what information you get from them, right? Like one of my favorite ways is to ask, hey, Jenna, if I could show you a way to make a positive impact in the lives of others, would you be interested?
Yes.
Every person says that. Like, who doesn't want their life to matter for somebody else's, right? And I truly believe that our stories are the springboard for another person's transformation, right? Like if I read your testimonial, now I can be like, oh, could I do that too? Like Jenna's just like I am. And if she did it, I can do it too. And it makes a lot of sense because it programs the RAS, right? The reticular activating system. And the RAS is always searching for new things, interesting things, and important things. And testimonials are those things. So a couple of ways to leverage testimonials. I encourage you to walk into your office as if you're a practice member. Sit down in your reception room as if you were sitting waiting for an appointment. Where do your eyes go? Put a testimonial in a nice frame. And one of the things that I did in my practice is Pottery Barn back in the day had these frames for kids' artwork. Do you know those frames? Like they're kind of, and you can slide something in and take it out really easily, right? So I had those everywhere in my office. So I would change out the testimonials the 3rd Thursday of every month. Because your habit may be to sit on that side of my office, right? And so now you're just going to keep seeing the same testimonial. And before long, you won't even see it. Like your RAS doesn't think it's important. So instead, and the reason the 3rd Thursday is important is I closed out the month I was in and opened the next month, the 3rd Thursday of the month. So then we would just move the testimonial one spot. So they're like, I don't know, 40 some spots around the office where we had testimonials. So you would just move it one spot clockwise. So now for the last month, you read testimonial that like Jenna's testimonial about PMS. Well, now you're going to see, I don't know, John's testimonial about, I don't know, energy.
Yeah.
Right. And so that informs my RAS about what's possible. And then underneath this, you'll always have a QR code in today's technology, a QR code that says, scan this code and share this story with a friend or family member. So we're always encouraging them in really easy ways to refer. Right? So then your QR code would have the testimonial and a call to action. Remember, it takes 8 to 15 invitations for somebody to do something different. So just because you ask one time, just know that you've got 7 to 14 more times. So that's a really powerful way to leverage testimonials. Another really powerful way to leverage your testimonials is to make sure that they're in all of your correspondence, that you work it into your content, that you have a PS that has a testimonial. You know, we also had notebooks like 3-ring binders, and they had plastic sleeves. And so then we would put articles, and then they were always underlined or boldface because no one's going to read all of that content, but you can bring their attention to a little bit. And then the backside testimonials proving, hey, this article that says chiropractic can do it, like here's 5 people that I've helped with the same condition. And then in those binders, it would be like, here's what our practice members are saying about us. So then it would have the conditions. And then on the new practice member tour, we would simply be like, hey, Jenna, if you're ever wondering, can chiropractic help your child with ear infections? You'll pick up this binder, go to ear infections. We have extra copies. So when you pull one out, we just ask that you participate in our recycling program, and that anything you take from this office, you place in someone else's hands. So we leave a better world after we've left. That's how you participate in our recycling program.
Yeah.
So just a couple of ways to leverage testimonials.
I love that, because I had a question this week, a CA workshop that I was doing, and a CA asked, so what if they put it in writing? And I think that in her mind, it had to be a video that this person left. And it was like, no, if it's in writing, then you can certainly, make a pretty graphic and put it on Instagram. But I love that you're saying printed on the wall, printed in the binder next to the study. I love email newsletters or blog posts. I do a lot of different blog posts so that we're updating our websites. And, whatever we say, the information and the studies and the statistics about heart disease in the US or whatever, always having a section on that email newsletter or blog post that says, here's a little story about somebody. And it can be just that handwritten thing that they did in your office or the Google review. But especially once you have it in writing, it is so easy to then repurpose it everywhere, digitally and physically.
Yeah. And remember that a system to be successful, it must be measurable, reproducible, innovative, and we must eliminate discretion, right? So this idea that we only collect testimonials when someone says something good, for sure, get it then. But also, like in the systems that I coach, and the 8th visit is in the sticky note system, the 8th visit is our testimonial visit. So it's really simple. That visit gets flagged, and we simply say, hey, Jenna, congratulations. This is your day in which you get to tell us how well we're serving you and caring for you. So you have a couple of options to complete your report card. You can give me your answers and I'll type them in, so you don't have to write anything. I'll give you the form. You can real easily just complete it, or I can send it to you digitally and you can complete it online, which is your preference. Like, give me your answers, I'll type them, answer it with a paper and pen, or do it online, which is your preference. And then they'll tell you their preference, right? Now, here's the deal. Let them know it's their ticket to get adjusted, right? Like, don't give them an out. And I don't mean out like people don't want to do it. They're just busy. So if we make it simpler for them, and that's why I say type it, because a lot of people are embarrassed by their handwriting, or they can't spell or grammar or whatever. And so we can give them the option to type it out. You can also send them a link to complete it. Just make sure you do the courtesy. And here's the courtesy. So we do this with any call to action that we have in the office. And it sounds like this. Hey, Jenna, if you're like me, sometimes I forget to do new things, not because they're not important, but just like there are a million other things that I'm doing, and sometimes I forget. So as a courtesy to you, I'm happy to call, text, or email you and remind you to complete your report card. Which do you prefer, call, a text, or an email? Now, notice I didn't give you the option of participating. I just gave you the option of how do you want me to follow up with you, which is a really big distinction and something different. And this is where, too, role playing and really focusing on the details makes all the difference. Because somebody who says, do you want me to email, text, or call you? And the person says, no, that's not the same request that I just said. So if you're not doing it the same, you're likely going to get way different results, in which case it's on you, not me.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like all of this neuroscience comes into all of these different relationships. Like when I'm coaching with CAs and they're like, how do I get the doctor to participate? And I tell them the same thing, where it's, would you like to film all of the videos on Friday? Or would you like to film these 3 videos every Friday? Like, would you like to do one each Friday? It's not an option of if the doctor is going to participate and film their videos, and so it takes the pressure off of the CA. But even, I apply it to parenting. When my 8-year-old this morning was like, there's nothing to eat. And I was like, okay, well, you can have French toast or you can have eggs. Which one can I make for you? And narrowing it down because, yeah, our brains do get so overwhelmed. My brain is overwhelmed on overload all the time. And it is those things of those small adjustments in our conversation and in our communication that can make a big difference.
So you're talking about Miller's Law. So Miller's Law, before they redid this research in the early 2000s. And so it used to be that the research supported that the human brain could process 7 plus or minus 2 pieces of information at a time. Well, when they redid it, they said, actually, it's 2. So now it's 4 plus or minus 2. And so in what I coach and in brain-centric design, we're always focused on 2. Like that's why as a CA, you're going to give somebody 2 options, morning or afternoon, 2 o'clock or 4 o'clock. Like, I hope no one is ever saying, when would you like to come in? That's so much for somebody to consider. No. Not to mention, if we ask it in that way and they're like 10 a.m. and right now the doctor is scheduled with a practice member at 9:15 and at 10:15, and now you put someone in the middle, now you're not cluster booking, right? So what that does even psychologically is no one likes to go where no one is, right? Because we like to feel that, oh, well, she's going here and she's going here. Like we all want a seat at the crowded restaurant, right? Like that's just how it is. We don't want to be the only ones eating, or else like, what are they serving, dog? And so it's really important. Like cluster booking isn't just a nice system. It's necessary on many levels for psychological safety. So that's another thing that we teach in Brain Centric is creating a psychologically safe practice. And we do that through greenhousing, priming, and using multiple perspectives. And that leads to a far better work environment as well as growth environment in the practice.
I love that. I think so many things that hold offices back from asking for testimonials is just like you said, they don't know how to ask in a positive way that is just saying that I can type it, you can do it online, or you can do it with a pen and paper. I love that tip. So this has been such a good conversation, but as we wrap it up, where is the best place for people to connect with you?
Yeah, I mean, you can find me. I'm pretty much all over social media. My favorite way to connect is either Facebook private messenger or email, which is drb@barbaraeaton.com. We've got some new things coming down the pike. If you haven't seen our movement yet of Brain Not Bone Alone, and it is where mind and spine align to heal humanity. That, we're doing national press releases, we're doing local press releases, I've been in this profession a long time, and I'm just tired of hearing if people knew what we did, then, they would all get adjusted. Well, so far how we're doing that isn't really working. We're still only consistently serving 2.38% of the population. And it's just time. 8 out of 10 Americans are affected by brain health issues. And they also report, according to the Dub Foundation, people also report that brain health is their top health issue, and priority is understanding that. And so we as chiropractors, we are the champions of brain health and function. And it's time right now, like Janice Hughes talks about, getting on the brain train. So get on the brain train, not as just like a marketing ploy, but it's because it's the truth. That's what we do. And so as chiropractors, to come together and have unity without uniformity. That's what we do at Brain Not Bone Alone. It's all about coming together on things that we agree upon without everyone having to do it the same.
Yes, I love that. Unity without uniformity. Perfect. Well, thank you for sharing all of this. I can't wait for everybody to listen to this and just connect with you. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Jenna. And thanks for all the work that you do. You're doing an awesome job. And I love seeing you at conventions and your smile. And may God bless you and your family.